Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and today, Mi'ez Hashem, we will be completing Daf Hey Amid Aleph. Our learning today should be Aschus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanesunu Batzara Ubashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha Hamakayim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yotziim Mitzar L'Rvacha Me'afela La'ira U'Mishibud L'Geula Hashta Ba'Gala U'Vizman Kariv V'Neimar Amen. Of course, we are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We are continuing to learn the complex halachas of Amira La'akum. So, we are holding now Reish Mem Dalid Sif Bey's top line of Hey Amid Aleph. So, here in Reish Mem Dalid, we have been discussing the halachas of a Yisrael that hires a Eino Yehudi Kablan. What's an Eino Yehudi Kablan? So, he's an Eino Yehudi. What's a Kablan? A kablan is a fellow who's going to be hired to do a job, and he's going to be paid by the job. He's not being paid by time. He could do the job at his own schedule. He's not required to work on Shabbos. If it works for his own designs and his own purposes to work on Shabbos, he could work on Shabbos. The Yid is definitely not requiring him to work on Shabbos. He can work at his own schedule, and he's paid by the job. He's not paid for his time. So, if the Yisrael does hire this Eino Yehudi Kablan under those terms, and now the Eino Yehudi Kablan decides that he wants to do the job or part of the job on Shabbos, the Yisrael is not mechuyev to be moicha. He's not mechuyev to stop him. He can allow the Eino Yehudi Kablan to go ahead and perform that work and do malacha on Shabbos. And there's no Amir La'akum. I'm not going to go back into the whole why there's no Amir La'akum. That's in the previous shur, and we've covered that very thoroughly already. But this is mutter. He can allow the Eino Yehudi Kablan to go ahead and do work on Shabbos. He's not mechuyev to stop him. That's what the Mechaber told us at the beginning of Reish Mem Daled. Now, an example of this that I have been using is you have a Yisrael and his dining room table broke. So he wants to give the dining room table to Tony, the Eino Yehudi carpenter, and he makes an arrangement with him. He says, Tony, take the table, go ahead and fix the table. I'm going to pay you $250 for the job. I'm paying you $250 to fix the table. Do it when you will. When it's finished, call me up, tell me it's done, and bring it back and put it back in my dining room, and everything is fine. If Tony wants to go ahead and Tony wants to work on the table on Shabbos and do malacha, he's going to sand and drill and everything else. He's going to do malacha on Shabbos on that dining room table. The Ruvain, the Yid, is not mechuyev to call Tony and say, oh, I forgot to tell you, no working on Shabbos. Why? Because he outsourced the job to Tony. When Tony works on Shabbos, it's for his own purposes, it's for his own designs. Sigarim Sitan mit mir, it has nothing to do with me. That's not a problem. Now, having said that, the Mechaber gave us a very important caveat. The caveat that the Mechaber gave us was, this is only mutter if the fact that the malacha is being done for Yisrael is bitzina. If it's not well known that the work that's being done is being done for the Yid. So if Tony is outside in his yard and he's working on the table, and it's not well known that this is Ruvain's dining room table, it's a Yid's dining room table, then it's okay. But if it's well known that the work is being done for a Yid, then it's aser. Why is it aser? Misham Marisayin. Because once it's well known that the malach is being done for a Yid, we're afraid that a Yid walks by, he sees Tony doing work on Shabbos, and it's well known that the work that he's doing is being done for a Yid. Let's say he's working on something that has big Hebrew letters all over it, or something of that nature. So then we're afraid of Marisayin. Why? Because the fellow who walks down the street, the Yid who walks down the street and sees this, he's going to say, what? Tony's doing work for a Yid on Shabbos? That looks like the Yid hired an employee, not a kablan. He hired a schir yoim. He's paying somebody to work on Shabbos. That would be also because of Amir La'akum. So if it's well known that the work is being done for a Yid, then we're worried about Marisayin. Now, how do we define what's called bitzina, what's called that it's not well known that it's being done for a Yid, and what's called, in the words of the Mechaber, Yedua Umeforsemes, when it's known and public knowledge that the work is being done for a Yid. How do we define that? Is it mamish like a case-by-case basis? We have to analyze each and every case? So the Mechaber gave us a little bit of a rule to follow. He gave us at least half of a rule. What was that rule? So the Mechaber told us in Sif Aleph, on Daled Amud Aleph, he gave us cases. He said, Lefikach, now that I'm giving you these guidelines, and I'm telling you that if it's well known that it's for a Yid, it's Aser, so now I'll give you cases that are Aser. And the cases that he gave us are all b'mechuber lekarka. What are the cases he gave us? You hire an Eini Yehudi Kablan, livnois loy chatzeroi, to build a chotzer. So that means to do work, avodas hakarka, in a yard, to create a chotzer, put up the walls of the chotzer, some things of that nature. Oy kosloi, or to build a wall on his house. Oy liktzar loy sadehu, or to go ahead and harvest a field. What's the common denominator of all of these cases? The common denominator of all of these cases is that this is avodah, this is work b'mechuber lekarka. Why is that called Yedua Umeforsemes? Because of the rule of thumb that we have from Chazal, that something that's mechuber, it was brought down over here by the Mishnah Berurah. One second. No, where is it? Oh, here it is. In Mishnah Berurah, Ois Kotnehei, and Daled Amud Aleph, the Mishnah Berurah said, Ritzaynai Loymar. What the Mechaber wants to say is, Distam Mechuber, by default, when we're dealing with things that are Mechuber Lakarka, Hevi Ki'ilu Yodua Umeforsemes Shehi Shel Yisrael. Chazal tell us that Mechuber, the general rule is that people know who owns Mechuber. When people go by a house, oh, that's Ruvain's house. Oh, that house, that's Shimon's house. No, that house, that's one of the few houses around here that belong to an Eini Yehudi. That's Tony, the auto mechanic. He owns that house. Even land, even fields, people generally speaking, the name, Shem Ba'olav Olav, the name of the owner is on the real estate. It's on the property. So the Mechaber told us that when it comes to Mechuber, we have to assume that it's Yedua Umeforsemes if it belongs to a Yid. And therefore, to have a Kablan Eino Yehudi do work on anything that's Mechuber Lekarka on Shabbos, even though it's not inherently Aser, because he's a Kablan, and the Opmach of a Kablan does not entail Amir La'akum, there's a problem of Marasai. Now, what happens when it comes to Tolush? What if it's not Mechuber Lekarka? So by Tolush, it would seem so far, based on what we've seen so far, that by Tolush, you really have to look more at a kind of a case-by-case basis. What is this item that's being worked on? If it's something that's Taka Yedua Umeforsemes, if it's something that everybody knows it belongs to a Yid, you're going to have a Marasayin problem. If it's not something that's Yedua Umeforsemes, you won't have a Marasayin problem. That's what we've seen so far. Now let's go to Hey Amud Aleph, and let's go to Sif Beis, where the Mechaber is going to give us a case of Tolush, but it's going to be something that the Mechaber is going to say, even though it's Tolush, we have to treat it as if it was Mechuber. Says the Mechaber here, Hey Amud Aleph, Sif Beis. Lifsail ha'avonim, to chisel stones. Back in the day, when you wanted to build a binyan, you didn't go ahead and buy nice rectangular squared off cinder blocks or bricks. You needed stones for building. You had to go to a stonemason, and he had to go ahead and chisel the stones and make them the right shape, etc., etc. So what if you want to hire an Eini Yehudi Kablan, Lifsail ha'avonim, to chisel stones for building purposes, ulesakein ha'koiros, or to prepare wooden beams, a mill. You want to go to somebody who has a mill, and you want him to mill beams for you. And you're going to do this b'kablanus. So you're not going to pay him by the hour. You're going to go tell him, Tony, I need 6 beams. I need 6 12-foot long, whatever the size is. I need 6 beams. Or I need 30 building stones for my house. I'll pay you $250 for the job. Do it when you will. So that's a kablan arrangement which l'chayra is inherently mutter. Says the Mechaber, lifsail ha'avanim u'losakin ha'kairos, to chisel building stones or to mill beams, afilu bebeisoi shel eino Yehudi, even if the kablan eino Yehudi is going to mamish do it in his own house, or he's going to do it in his own workshop. There's going to be zero connection to you. He's not doing it on your building site. Asur, this is asur. Why? Explains the Mechaber, kevan de letzarich mechuberhu, because you're talking about building bricks. You're talking about beams for a building. These are not mechuber lekarka, they're dvarim shebetolush, but they are letzarich mechuber. And since they're letzarich mechuber, says the Mechaber, we have to treat them as if it was mechuber, and we're going to say that there's a maris ayin iser. If somebody sees the miller milling those beams, he's going to say, Tony is milling those 12-foot beams? That must be for Ruvain's building project on 13th Street. And it looks like he hired a schir yoim. It looks like he's being over Amir La'akum. So says the Mechaber. Now, says the Mechaber, he takes it a step further. Says the Mechaber, V'im asukein. And if Ruvain Taka hired an Eina Yehudi Kablan to do this, to chisel stones, to mill beams, Lo yishakein babinyan, he should not use them in his structure. He should not build them into the house. That's a machmir the Mechaber wants to be over here. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he's cutting your dalid. Lifsail ha'avonim, to chisel stones. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is going to make a very, very, very important point over here. And this, it's interesting because this strikes a chord by me. Many years ago, I had a situation where my son was contracted to build svarmashranken for a shul. Now, the shul wanted those svarmashranken to match the svarmashranken that had been custom built many, 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 many years earlier. Now, when those svarmashranken were originally built, they were built with custom lumber. It was not standard-sized lumber, and they really wanted it to match. So we looked. This is not a size lumber that you could get anywhere. So we found a mill. It happens to be in Edison Highland Park. It's still around. Edison Millwork. So we went to Edison Millwork to go ahead and order that lumber. They were mamish going to mill it. They were going to take larger pieces and mill it down to that size. Now, when you're building built-in svarmashranken into a house, that is called mechuber, because the house is mechuber, and you're building in furniture into the house. That's called avoda b'mechuber. So you're contracting a kablon. We're paying him for the job. I'm not paying him for the hour. We're giving him a set rate to deliver to us that lumber. For a set price, you're getting paid by the job. So you're hiring a kablon eino Yehudi. Are you mechuyev? And this happens to be that at that point, this fellow, even though I think Edison Millwork itself, was closed on Shabbos. I don't remember for sure. But the miller who worked downstairs would come in and work on Shabbos. So you mechuyev to tell him don't work on Shabbos because this is b'mechuber and this is he's working on Tolush, but it's tzorich mechuber. You're going to build it into the house. Are you mechuyev to tell him not to work on Shabbos? The answer is in this Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting your dalid. Lifsail ha'avanim. Says the Chavetz Chaim. There's a major point here that you have to realize. V'davka k'she'avanim v'kairos heim shel Yisrael. The only time this is nageya is if the raw material, the raw stones that are going to be chiseled into building blocks, and the raw wood that is going to be milled into beams belong to the Yid. Unisanam le'uman eina Yehudi, and you're giving it to an eina Yehudi craftsman, a kablan, lisatisam, to go ahead and chisel them, ulisaknam, and to mill the wood. So what's happening over here in Sif Beis, in this Mechaber, is not that you're hiring Edison Millwork to go get the raw materials and go mill it into the size lumber that you need. No, what the Mechaber is talking about is Ruvain is giving stones to the stonemason. And he's telling him, take my stones, bekablonos, and chisel them down to a certain size and shape. Take my wood and mill it down to a certain size and shape. But the Kablan is working on the Yisrael's raw materials. Aval, says the Chavetz Chaim, if the Eina Yehudi is going ahead and chiseling these stones from scratch, he's using his own stones. Or he's milling wood that belongs to him. So that the situation is where Ruvain the Yid hired the Eina Yehudi in a kablanus arrangement from beginning to end. I don't know from nothing. I don't have wood, I don't have stones, I don't have anything. I'm entering into a kablanus arrangement with you to supply me with 30 building blocks of this and that size. Vahabrera oid biyada Eina Yehudi, and the Eina Yehudi has the option lesates avonim acheros, to go ahead and chisel other stones. Ulahachzik elu la'atzmai. So in other words, you came into the stonemason's shop and you saw in the stonemason's shop 30 raw stones. And you said, you know what, do me a favor, take those stones, chisel them down to the size and shape that I need. We'll enter into a kablanus arrangement. Okay. Everything here is left up to the Eina Yehudi stonemason. He could use those stones. He could use different stones of the same color or whatever it is. He could chisel these stones and then sell them to another customer because another customer needs them stat. And he could go ahead and get other ones and chisel other ones. In that case, says the Mishnah Berurah, Afilu oisezel tzarich Yisrael, even if he's doing this for the Yid, im eina bebeisai shel Yisrael, as long as he's not in the Yisrael's house mamish, av shehu meforsem she'asezel tzarich Yisrael, even if it's taka yedua meforsemes, that the work is being done for a Yid, mutter. It's 100% mutter. In other words, if Edison Millwork, mamish the what happened by me, if I'm not giving Edison Millwork wood, if Edison Millwork is sourcing the wood, they're doing the whole thing from beginning to end, then even if the guy at Edison Millwork is working outside in the yard and everybody who walks by says, oh, you know what Tony's doing over there? He's milling that crazy size lumber that Rabbi Weiss needs for his son to build this Farmschranken in the Shtiebel, right? So what? It's not my wood. There's zero connection to me over here. They know that he's doing it because he needs to deliver that size lumber to me. But it's not mine. It's not my wood. It's not happening in my house. It's done by kablanis. So says the Mishnah Berurah, that's mutter. Shezeloi nikra dain meleches Yisrael. In that case, Tony is not doing Yiddish work. He's working on his own stones. If he mills that wood and then he gets another customer who says, you know what, I need that size wood too, and I want it right now and I'll pay you cash. Rabbi Weiss, he could wait till next week. He's not in a rush. So what do you think Tony's going to do? He's going to sell it to that guy for cash right then and there. And I'm going to wait another week. Nothing wrong. So it's not Meleches Yisrael. There's no Meleches Yisrael over here. Kain Kosev Adogel Merevava. So says the Dogel Merevava. Now, so what do we see over here? What we see over here is, so the Mechaber told me that there is a time when an Eina Yehudi Kablan cannot work for Yisrael, even by something that's tolush, even though you might think that it's not Yedua Umufresemes Lakoil, that the work is being done for a Yid. What's that case? That case is chiseling building blocks, milling beams, house beams. Why? Because that is considered tzarech mechuber. Therefore, we give it the same din as mechuber, and therefore we assume that there's a marasayin problem. So said the Mechaber. He took it so far as to say that if you do allow that to happen be'isser, then you shouldn't use those materials in your building. You should not use them. So said the Mechaber. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah, and the Mishnah Berurah points out, understand the scenario that the Mechaber is talking about. The scenario of the Mechaber is where the raw materials that are being worked on belong to a Yid. If they don't belong, one point, and the Mechaber said that this is usher, even if the Eina Yehudi is doing the work in his own house, in his own shop, it's still usher. Says that Mishnah Berurah, realize the Mechaber is talking about where he's working on a Yid's raw materials. But if he's not working on a Yid's raw materials, if he's working on his own raw materials, There's no connection to the Yid. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what people think. It's not Meleches Yisrael. Now let me ask you something. Having said that, that's mutter. When the Ein Yehudi is working on his own raw materials, where is it mutter? Is it only mutter in the house of the Ein Yehudi? Or is it even usher if he does the work outside of his own house? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ukvar kidmu b'tshuvas haradvaz b'chelik shishi siman nun vav. The truth is that this that I'm telling you from the Dogel Meravava, it was already said by the Tshuvas Haradvaz also. This heter, that if the raw materials belong to the Ein Yehudi, then it's not Meleches Yisrael. However, the Tshuvas Haradvaz adds a point. Shabesayim sham, dem haya ha'Ein Yehudi mesata is oisam b'Shabbos, samoch lebinyan. But what if the Ein Yehudi kablan, what if Tony the mill worker is milling the wood, and it's his wood, but he's doing it mamish next to the binyan that belongs to the Israel. So let's say Tony, the mill worker, knows that he has to make this lumber for the Svarm Shranken in the Stiebel. And, the precise measurements that he has to match to the existing Svarm Shranken. So he decides that he's going to bring, sawhorses, and he's going to bring his belt sander, and he's going to bring some chisels, and he's going to set up shop right next to the Stiebel. That way, he could run into the Stiebel with a tape measure, and he could take a look, or even without it, he could go inside, he could eyeball it, and he could say, oh, that's the corners are beveled, or the corners are not beveled. And now I'll do it over there. Says the Radvaz, if the Ein Yehudi stonemason wants to chisel his own stones for the Yiddish building project, Samach Lebinyan, next by the Yiddish construction site, Ein Nochain Adavar, that would not be proper, Misha Maris Ayin, because then you have such a strong Maris Ayin. Yes, it's true. Technically, this is not even Meleches Yisrael, because the simple fact is, he's not working on stones that belong to a Yid. He's not working on the Yid stones. So it's just not Meleches Yisrael. He didn't deliver the goods yet. He could still sell them to somebody else. So he's not doing Meleches Yisrael. But if he's working by the Yiddish construction site, if he's milling the wood, if he's sanding the wood by the Stiebel, then no. That the Radvaz says, Einachan Adavar, Misham Maris Ayin, Shalo Yomru Schirayhu. Because people are going to look at it, what do they say? If it smells, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it has a beak like a duck, it's a duck. Over here, if the guy is working right outside, over there, on Shabbos, it certainly doesn't pass the smell test. It looks like he's a Schir Yom that's hired by the Yid, which would certainly be awesome. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Tesvav. So the Mechaber gave as his rationale here. He said that the building blocks and the beams, the L'tzarech Mechuberhu, even though technically they are Tolush, they're not Mechuber, so they would not fall under the rubric of the items where we should say it's automatically Yedua Umufersemes L'Koil, that the work is being done for a Yid. It's not Mechuber L'Karka, but it's Tzarech Mechuber. So explains the Chavetz Chaim, what does it mean Tzarech Mechuber? Kidei L'Shakam B'Habinyan, because these are items that get built into a building, which is mechuber. Al kein chashavu ke mechuber. Therefore, the mechaber considers it like mechuber. He applies the din of mechuber to them, and therefore, v'tzarech limchais biyadai, you must object to the Ein Yehudi if he's going to do the work on Shabbos. You must stop him. Imhu b'saychat chum. Remember what the mechaber said in Sif Aleph. The mechaber said this whole Maris Ayin is only if the work is being done either in a Yiddish neighborhood or within the tchum of a Yiddish neighborhood. Even if the work is being done far away from the building site, but if the Ein Yehudi is doing work on Yid's raw materials that are tzarich mechuber, and he's doing it on Shabbos, and he's doing it b'say chatchum, you got to stop him because of Marasayin. Oiskot and Tezayin, the Mechaber went so far, he said, V'im asu kain, if you do this be'isser, you should not use these building materials. V'im asu kain, Says the Mishnah Berurah, he gives us a heads up. And he says, take a look later on in this Siman, in Mishnah Berurah, what I have to say about this. That's going to be Meretz Hashem in tomorrow's share, where the Mishnah Berurah is going to bring down the Shitas Rabbeinu Tam, where the Shitas Rabbeinu Tam is that when it comes to something which is inherently mutter, like kablanus, which is inherently mutter, and it's only a maris ayin issue, so then yesh lahatir b'di'eved l'shakim b'binyan. B'di'eved, you could put them into the binyan. If we have time, we'll take a look at a bir halacha over here, but let's go further first. Okay, now we're going to see a Ramah. Now this is one of those Ramahs where if you're not careful, you could totally misunderstand what the Ramah says. So we're going to read the words of the Ramah, and then we'll jump right away into the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yud Zayin, so that we accurately understand the Ramah. Says the Ramah, bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch Hey Yam and Aleph. Hago. V'yesh Oimrim, there are those that say, and the Ramah brings this down from the Kolbai, V'yesh Oimrim, de'im einay meforsim shehu shel Yisrael. If it's not meforsim, if it's not well known that the work that the Einay Yehudi Kablan is doing is being done for a Yid, Shari, it's mutter. Okay, what's mutter? That's what we have to see in the Mishnah Berurah. Precisely what is the Ramah going on? Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Yud Zayin. V'yesh Oimrim dim einay. Says the Chavetz Chaim, and he brings this down from the Oila Shabbos, the Eliyah Rabbah. He says it's mashma like this from the Gra, and he says the truth is, if you go to the Kolbai himself, which is who the Rabbah is quoting, and you read the Kolbai carefully, you'll see that it's very clear that this is what the Kolbai means. He also brings it down from the Pri Megadim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hayesh Oimrim. These words of the Ramah, this Yesh Oimrim, Koi Akulahu, is going on the entire Sif Aleph. Tahainu, meaning, what did the Mechaber tell us here? The Mechaber told us that Kablanus is inherently mutter. Inherently, by Kablanus, there is no issue of Amir La'akum. However, said the Mechaber, if it's Yedua Umuforsemes Lakoil, if it's well known that the work is being done on behalf of a Yid, it's Aser because of Maris Ayin. Then the Mechaber went on to spell out to us that if it's work that's being done b'mechuber, that equals Yodua Umufresemes, and therefore any work that's being done in mechuber may not be done by a Kablan Eina Yehudi on Shabbos, because it's also because of Maris Ayin. And now in Sif Beis, the Mechaber extended that to Lesates Avonim, Lifsal Avonim, and Lesakin HaKoros, even though that's technically Talush, but we treat it like Mechuber. Says the Chavetz Chaim, when the Ramah says that there's a Yesh Oimrim that says, if it's not Meforsum, that it belongs to Yisrael, it's mutter, he's going on the whole shebang. The Ramah is saying, even work b'mechuber lekarka. The Mechaber says that any work that's being done by the Kabbalah Eini Yehudi b'mechuber lekarka is automatically a dua umufresemes. Says the Ramah, the Kolbai says no. Min hastam, even avodah b'mechuber could be done by a Kabbalah Eini Yehudi. When is it usher to have a Kabbalah Eini Yehudi do work on Shabbos? Only if you know that it's Yedua Umufresim L'Koil. But if you know that it's not Yedua Umufresim L'Koil, let's say you want to have a Kabbalah Eini Yehudi do work on a building, and you know that the people don't know that that building belongs to a Yid. There's a sign over there on that building that says, this building is owned by Starlight Industries. I just made up a name. And nobody knows who Starlight Industries is. They have no clue. So, that's Yidden? Oh, I know. Really? That's a Yiddish building? I had no idea. Right? They don't know that it's owned by this Gvir who has 16 different companies, and one of his companies is Starlight Industries. So, in such a case, says the Ramah, Kabbalah Eini Yehudi? There's no Marasayan. Why is there Marasayan? Nobody has any clue that that belongs to a Yid. So, that's what the Ramah means. Take a look back at the Ramah. V'yesh Oimrim. Dim einay meforsim shu shel Yisrael, even if it's mechuber. He's going back in the whole Sif Aleph. the Mechaber said if it's Mechuber, that equals Yedua Umufersemes, and then it's also B'Shom Arasayin. Says Rambam, no, he brings that for the Kolbay. Yesh Oimrim, Im Einem Ufersim Shu Shal Yisrael. If it's not well known that it belongs to a Yid, Shari. Says the Mishnah Berurah again, Yozayin, Hayesh Oimrim Kayakuluhu. This Yesh Oimrim is going on the entire Sif Aleph. Dahainu, Af Mechuber Gomur. Even doing work Mamish B'Mechuber. Going and building a house, building an extension onto a house. Loi asru b'kablanus ela bistama. It's only asr to do it b'kablanus min hastam, when we don't know what people know and what people don't know. The default position is that kablanus is asr for an Eini Yehudi on Shabbos b'mechuber. That's the default. Why? Because the default is that by mechuber shem ba'olav olav. The assumption is that people know. The mistama shem Yisrael nikrolav. Aval b'yadua lanu she'enim meforsim abinyan al shem Yisrael. But if we know that it's not meforsim, we know that no, people don't know. People are not aware that a yid owns that building. Then loy asru b'kibalos. Then kablanus is not asr. Now you'll ask me a question. If that's true, if this Ramah is arguing on the whole Mechaber in Sif Aleph, then why did he say so? Why did he wait until the end of Sif Beis, where the Mechaber went and extended what he said in Sif Aleph to Talush of building blocks and building beams? Why did he wait till over there to argue? Why didn't he argue over there? So he explains to Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says, this that the Ramah chose to write this over here at the end of Sif Beis, where we're talking about building blocks and building beams, is very simple. Mishum de bebinyan mamish ein motzri zeh. He says that it is not typical that by mamish a house or mamish a building, people don't know who it belongs to. Min hastam, people do know who buildings and houses belong to. Min hastam, people do know who a field belongs to. You tell me you have a situation where you know that the Olam doesn't know that this belongs to a Yid, so okay, so then there's no Marasayan, because people don't know that it belongs to a Yid. So the Ramah said, Shari, if it's not well known that it belongs to a Yid, that even if it's avodah b'mechuber, kablanus is mutter. What does that mean that it's mutter? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu she'enet tzarich limchais be'eini Yehudi. You do not have to object to the Eini Yehudi and stop him im yasav alachta b'Shabbos. You're not mechuyev to stop him. Ubelvad shelo yomer lo sheyasav b'Shabbos. Certainly, you're not allowed to instruct the Eini Yehudi to work on Shabbos. You're never allowed to instruct an Eini Yehudi to work for you on Shabbos. I don't care if it's Tolish, I don't care if it's Mechuber, I don't care if it's Mefursim, I don't care if it's not Mefursim. You're never allowed to instruct an Eini Yehudi to do work for you on Shabbos. Amir Laka 101. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, and this is a little bit tricky. V'chol zeh, and all of this. What does that mean, v'chol zeh? So we have to be very careful here. The chol zeh means this heter of the Ramah, and here we're specifically referring to the heter when it comes to things like building blocks and building beams. The heter that you can allow a kablan Eini Yehudi to work on a Yid's building blocks or a Yid's building beams on Shabbos, if you know that it's not well known that those raw materials belong to a Yid, dafka ima Eini Yehudi oise bebeisai. It has to be that the Eini Yehudi is doing the work in his workshop or in his house, or at least he's doing the work far away from the Yiddish building site, so that it shouldn't be obvious that it belongs to a Yid. Now, I want to make the point over here very carefully. Again, when the Mishnah Berurah said over here, v'chol zeh, he's referring specifically to the chiseling of the building blocks, to the milling of the building beams. You know what he's not talking about? He's not talking about, we just said that the Ramah argues on the whole Mechaber. The Ramah holds, for example, that if you want to hire a kablan Eini Yehudi, pay him by the job, he could do the work whenever he wants to build an extension onto a house that you own. And you know that nobody knows that you own that house. You know that it's not Mufursim. Not nobody knows. You know that your cousin knows. You know that your wife's best friend knows. But you know that nobody in the area knows that I own that house. They all think it's a guy's house. In that case, you could have a Kablan Ein Yehudi even build an extension onto the house, mamish on the building site. Why? Because it's Damar Zayin. Nobody knows. So he could work mamish on the building site. So what does the Mishnah Berurah mean over here when he says v'chol zeh dafke ima Ein Yehudi oiseh bebeisoi? He's talking about working with building with raw materials. What he's telling you is, if you're going to allow a Kablan Ein Yehudi to work on a Yid's raw materials, like building stones or like wooden beams, and you're going to allow him to do it on Shabbos because you know that most people don't know that those raw materials belong to me, they don't belong to a Yid, that heter is only if he does it in Edison Millworks' workshop, or he does it in his house. Not if he does it in your house. Not if he does it next to your building site. That would be usher. It has to be rachik bi'abinyan, kedei shelo yein minkar shu shel Yisrael. Because if he does it by your building site, it's going to be Mar Zayin. Mashpa mekaba achroinim, Chavetz Chaim says, it's mashpa by many achroinim, desvirlon ledina kahayesh omer mazeh, that we paskin like this Ramah, we paskin like this Yesh Omer, like the Kolboy, but only halfway. We paskin like this Yesh Omer, le'inyan sitas ha'avonim. When it comes to the Shaila of Sif Beis, when it comes to the Shaila of this Chiddush of the Mechaber in Sif Beis, where the Mechaber said, we take something that's tolush, like building blocks, like building beams, which are tolush, and we apply the din of Mechuber to them, because they're made to be attached to the Mechuber. And the Mechaber said that that's Osir, that's considered like Mechuber, it's considered Yedua Umufresemes Lakoil, and therefore there's Mar Zayin. We don't paskin like that Mechaber. We paskin like the Ramah. We paskin like the Achrayim say, that you can allow the Ein Yehudi Kablan to chisel stones that belong to a Yid, to mill wood that belongs to a Yid, if it's not mamish yedua umufresemes lakoil. We don't give it the automatic din of mechuber and say, it's mechuber, it's asa. No. You could allow him to do it. Unless it's mamish, unless you know that it's yedua umufresemes lakoil, then it could be a problem. But if you don't know that it's yedua umufresemes lakoil, then it's mutter. We paskin like this Ramah. If it's not mufresim, even though it's tzarich mechuber, it's mutter. But how do we paskin when it comes to the Shaila of Sif Aleph? How do we paskin when it comes to allowing a Kablan Ein Yehudi to do avodah b'mechuber, to build a wall in your chutzner, or to build a wall on your house? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ach le'inyan mechuber gufa, when it comes to bona fide mechuber, building an extension on the house, afilu im abinyan oimid b'makom she'ein yedua shehu shalai, over there, the Mishnah Berurah says we go mamish like the Mechaber. Even if the house that the Kablan Ein Yehudi is building a wall on it's 6 blocks away from your house, it's not Yedua L'Koil that it belongs to you, Gamken En L'Hakol. You shouldn't be Mekel. You should follow the Shitas HaMechaber, that since this work is b'mechuber, it's automatically Yedua Umufresemes L'Koil, Shem Ba'olav Olav. By default, we assume everybody knows it's a Yiddish property, and therefore there's a Mar Zayin problem. And why? He explains. Because even though the property is a rental property that you own 20 blocks away from your house, yesh lachush l'shcheinav, how about the people who live nearby that house? They all talk. Who does that house belong to? You know, the one down the block next to Yankel. Oh, there's a guy who lives on the other side of town who owns a bunch of houses around here. He rents them out. So the people who live around there, they know that it belongs to a Yid. All you have to worry about your own household members. They know that you own that property. And when they go by that property and they see an Ein Yehudi working there, they're going to be choshed that you hired a schir yoim. And they're going to be choshed you. Like we discussed earlier in Sif Katan Vav, when there are times that we have to worry about Mar Zayin just on your own household members or on guests that come to your house. So just to tie up over here. In the end of the day, it comes out that there's a major machlokes between the Mechaber and the Ramah. The Mechaber holds that to hire an Ein Yehudi Kablan to do work on something that's considered mechuber lekarka, or something that's even tzoyrich mechuber, like building blocks or building beams, is also because of marasayin. Why is it also because of marasayin? Because the default position is that everybody knows the ownership of mechuber lekarka. And something like building blocks and building beams, we apply the same din as mechuber because they're tzoyrich mechuber. So even though the kablanus arrangement, if the kablan is being paid by the job and there's no time restrictions on him, so he's not required to work on Shabbos, even though that's inherently mutter, it doesn't entail amir la'akum, but there's a marasayin problem. If everybody knows that the work that's being done is being done for Yisrael, there's a marasayin problem. Said the mechuber, or tzarich mechuber, is automatically yadua u'meforsemes, that the work is being done for Yisrael, and therefore it's also mishum marasayin. Tolush, you have to know, is it yadua u'meforsemes, or is it not yadua u'meforsemes? That was the shittas of mechaber. Came along the Ramah, and the Ramah said, this automatic yadua u'meforsemes by mechuber, the Kolbai disagrees. He disagrees on the whole thing, on the whole concept, that by mechuber, there's an automatic yadua u'meforsemes. You have to look. If it's yadua u'meforsemes, that it belongs to a yid, then it's aser, because of marasayin. If it's not, in the words of the Ramah, im eino meforsim shushal Yisrael, if it's not meforsim, that it belongs to a yid, so then, he says, then it's not a problem. B'yadua lanu, you're going to be very careful. The Mishnah Berurah said, Aval b'yadua lanu she'eino meforsim abinyan al shem Yisrael. If we know that this mechuber is not yadua u'meforsim, that it belongs to a yid, then a kablan any Yehudi is mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, from the Achrayim, it comes out that we paskin like the Ramah to be mekel halfway. We paskin like the Ramah in the context of the Mechaber's Chiddush of Sif Beis. Are we going to give tolush? Are we going to give something that's tzorich mechuber, like building blocks and building beams, the automatic din of mechuber, and call it yadua u'meforsim? That we paskin like the Ramah? No. We're not going to do that if we know that it's not yadua u'meforsim, that these stones and this wood belongs to a yid. We're not going to give it the automatic din, and kablon ein Yehudi is going to be mutter, and there's no amir la'akum. When it comes to real mechuber, a kablan ein Yehudi building an extension on a house, a kablan ein Yehudi doing avodas hakarka, harvesting a field, over there we're going to go like the mechaber, and we're going to say, since it's mechuber, the default position is that everybody knows who it belongs to, and over there we should not be mekel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs parnassus shaduchim to those in need. We should be zoichet to see the bias gal tzedek, the meher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.